Welcome to Stranger Encounters. I am Tommy Salmons. Today we don't have a guest. I figured I'd cover some questions that some of my guests have had and give y'all an overview of what Stranger Encounters is all about. In order to completely explain anything, I believe that you have to go through history. I don't believe that anything happens in a vacuum. I believe that everything is the result of something else. So why I came up with the idea of Stranger Encounters in short is I wanted a platform where individuals that are scripting their own lives could share their stories. Because it seems like nowadays the individual is the outlier. So I named it Stranger Encounters because I figured I'd have strangers on here, people that you are not familiar with, people that you do not know. And we'd be talking about a subject that seems stranger and stranger every day, which is individualism. So in order to understand why I chose this subject, you have to understand a little bit about me. I joined the workforce when I was 17 years old, working full time. I had graduated high school and I joined the workforce. And at no point in time was I satisfied with my choices. And not the choices I was making, but the choices that were laid out before me. Oh, you can go work full time or you can go to college. Well, I didn't want to do either of those. Maybe I wanted to do something else. And I didn't have anybody telling me that there was another way to do things, that there was another way to approach life, to approach your career, to go about things. My parents were all about work. They worked all the time. There were times in my life when my dad had 2 or 3 jobs. My mom worked herself up from the mailroom to one of the top workman's compensation adjusters in Texas. You know, so I got the work ethic and I understood it, and I had a really good understanding of what work ethic was. But what I didn't know was how to do what it was that I wanted to do with my life. I always questioned societal norms, and I was always in favor of individuality. I never was a conformist. I was always kind of, are you sure? I was always skeptical about everything I was told, about everything I was shown, about the way life was drawn out. And I've come to realize that a lot of my discomfort was the fact that I wasn't in control. I had no control over who I was. It was all laid out in front of me. This is what you're supposed to do. And I followed that scheme. I didn't want to. I had no desire to follow that. I had no desire to be a truck driver. I had no desire to be a painter or a sandblaster. I had no desire to do these things. When I went and did telemarketing and I was selling websites over the phone, I didn't desire to do that. That's not what I wanted to do. When I joined the military, I thought it was going to be a new adventure, but it wasn't what I really desired. It wasn't where I wanted to be. I always kind of pictured myself like I read the book On the Road by Jack Kerouac when I was young, and I always kind of pictured that as my life, you know, a vagabond. And I guess it kind of has become that, you know, being a truck driver. I don't really call one place home, even though I have a home. I have a wife, you know, we have some nice land and this, that, and the other. But I was never really satisfied with where my life was. And it had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with income or anything like that. It was just, just didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like, and I didn't know how to change it. So I'd say a couple of years ago, I ran into, I was politically active. I was paying attention. I can't say active, but I was paying attention and I understood politics very well. And I ran into the theory of voluntarism. And it really struck a chord with me because I was like, yeah, that's how things are supposed to be. We're supposed to be free people interacting freely amongst each other without the politics of the day interfering in our lives. I mean, think about it. I think I've heard Dave Smith say this. You go to a grocery store and you do it voluntarily. Nobody puts a gun to your head and forces you to go to Kroger or H-E-B or whatever grocery chain you have near you, or like, here's Market Basket, Brookshire Brothers, Safeway, whatever you got near you. And I never cared for the idea of voting because I never cared for asserting my control on other people through a politician. I always thought it was bullshit. I'm like, no, I'm free. What does it matter? I don't care what Joe Blow has to say. He's not living my life. I live my life better than he could because I'm the only one living my life. He's not living my life. So I started really looking into self-ownership and I dug into some Lockean principles. Okay, so that was a little dog interruption. As I was saying, we dug into I was digging into some Lockean principles and looking at the idea of natural rights. Read The Law by Frederick Bastiat. And I started thinking about the real importance of scripting my own life. And this is something I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about, where he has a self-authoring program. I haven't looked at it. It's something I intend to look at in the near future. And I started thinking about successful people. And one of the common threads you hear amongst successful people is they're always writing down goals, plans, dreams, ambitions. And I'm like, what are they doing? Like, why do they do that? I understand it has to do with self-determination, but I realize what they're doing is they're scripting their life. They're actually authoring their life, like where they want to go. And I'm like, so if this is what successful people know, where was it that how did I miss this lesson? Like, what was it that I missed? And so I started thinking about school. And I eventually ran into John Taylor Gatto when I started investigating school. And he had this really interesting analogy he used. And I don't even think it was an analogy. I don't even know if it's the right way to say it. But he said the only other time you ever hear the word school used is when you're talking about fish. And he said the great thing about fish is when you're watching a school of fish, when one fin moves, all the fins move. And they move in sequence together. And there's no autonomy. It's one solid being. And I'm like, well, why did they use that term to describe the education process of our children? And this is where things get rough because it sounds so conspiratorial it can't be true, but it's absolutely true. When you start digging into where the modern school system came from, it traces back in the United States to Massachusetts and a guy named Horace Mann. And he was really unhappy with the schooling as it was going in the 1800s. And he didn't like the individualism. He didn't like the independence that children were showing. And so he started looking into the school system and the different systems around the country and around the world. And he ran across the Prussian education system. Now, the Prussian education system was developed in the 19th century after Prussia had lost in the Napoleonic Wars. But it was worse than just losing in the Napoleonic Wars. They were having an issue with soldiers running from the battlefield. Now, the Prussians were known as professional fighters. They were professional soldiers. They were supposed to be the best in the world. And they were fleeing the Napoleonic army. And so what they decided to do is the only way that we can create the correct mindset for a soldier willing to die for the country is to get them young and to get them at an impressionable age and put them through this schooling system in which we teach them that the most important thing is the society, is the nation, is the country. And that if you have to die for the nation, then that's what you have to do. And they realized in order to kill the individuality, the independence of the children, they had to get rid of their creativity. And I've heard it described like this. If you see a child at the age of 5 and you ask them what they want to do with their life and what they want to be when they grow up, they get a twinkling in their eyes and they brighten up and they get all excited and they talk about it like it's the greatest thing and anything's possible and the whole world's ahead of them. And it's an exciting time in life. But if you talk to a guy when he's like 20, 21 years old, and you start talking about, so what are you going to do, in the future? It's like that whole excitement has been completely drained of him. They're dead-eyed. They're not real certain. They're just kind of going with the flow. And I started thinking, who's scripting these kids' lives? Now, if you look at historians that have talked about man, Elwood P. Cubberley has the most succinct description of what man did to the education system. And he's praising them for this. So I'm not taking people that are talking bad about man. No one did more than he, man, to establish in the minds of the American people the conception that education should be universal, non-sectarian, free, and that its aims should be social efficiency, civic virtue, and character rather than mere learning or the advancement of educational ends. Now, the problem I have here isn't the fact that I hate society or that I think civic virtue is necessarily bad. The problem I have with this is, where are the parents in all this? When do the parents get some say in this? And I know some people are going to be like, well, send them to private school. Well, not everybody can afford to do that. And that's why they wanted to make it free. I get it. But they quit involving the parents in the decisions. Do they ask the parents, what do you think your child's aptitude is, or what does your child want to do with their life? How can we better aim their education to meet the ends that child wants to meet? They don't ask a parent that. They don't give a shit about that. What do they care about? They care about your test scores. What, you got to memorize some dates? And I mean, luckily I was pretty good at that. But what it did is it bored me. It killed my ambition. Not my ambition. It killed my drive to be in school. I didn't go to college because I was sufficiently drained of any evidence that education system had anything to offer me other than a lot of boredom. And I'd get in a lot of trouble because I was bored all the damn time. And they started coming up with these concepts, ADD, ADHD. These things didn't exist back in the day. Why didn't these things exist before? And people, they did. They always existed. They just didn't know what to tell. Well, show me something that's biologically different about somebody with ADHD. Show me something that's different about these kids. You have this kid. I read a story about a kid, 19, 20-year-old with Down syndrome a while back, who had started a restaurant. Well, the school system didn't teach him to start a restaurant. That wasn't the school system that did that. That was his parents. But all our parents went through these school systems. And the school system taught them, and I quote, social efficiency, civic virtue, rather than learning or the advancement of educational ends. So the school system was more concerned about teaching them social efficiency and civic virtue. And if that's all they knew, well, then what are they going to tell us? They're going to teach us the same. Well, you got to pay attention in school. You got to be obedient. You got to attend, and you have to participate. Well, why? Why is that? Now, at the same time that Horace Mann is introducing this education system, there's these British and European bankers and businessmen traveling to the U.S., trying to convince United States businessmen and bankers that the way we do things is wrong and it's backwards. And that the elitist must promote this class theory known as the mudsill theory, that stated that there must be, in its natural or inherent, for there to be a lower class for the upper class to depend on for labor and services. Okay, this sounds like where Marx got his ideas of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. But the thing is, in America, we didn't have the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. That wasn't something we depended on. That wasn't the way that our system was structured. Our system was structured where people were individuals and they were independent. And Lincoln recognized this in a speech in 1859, in which he gave to the Wisconsin Agricultural Fair. And he addressed the mudsill theory, and he disputed it because he said it doesn't matter. Like agriculture, you small business owners, you industrialists with your small warehouses and your small industrial shops, and you agriculturalists with your small farms, you're the backbone of our country. You're not only our proletariat, but you are our bourgeoisie, because you were self-educated and because you work hard and because you labor. It doesn't take away from the fact that you're capable of being educated and being wise. And this reminded me a lot of the Plato and Socrates idea that the entire civilization should be that of philosophers who are versed in the Socratic method and are self-educated and self-reliant and not dependent on someone else to bring in jobs. But the school system, they took these two ideas, the idea of the Prussian school system and the mudsill theory, they mixed them together. And now today in 2018, you're looking at a system where if you go to school within the inner city in the lower class neighborhoods, you're being trained to be a laborer. All you're expected to do is follow instructions. You're not expected to be an expert at anything. If you happen to excel, then you get pushed up to management, which is what the middle class schools are training you to do, be in management. And all the elitists, like, go to Princeton and Yale and Harvard and all these places, but they all come from upper class neighborhoods for the most part. It's very rare that anybody sneaks into Harvard. It's very rare. It could happen. It's not unheard of, but it's rare. That's not the norm. That's not how they've done this. They've scripted our places in life. And they designed institutions to keep us within these places. Now, whether they did it for good reasons, bad reasons, whatever, somebody like me who's very dependent on myself, I'm very much an individualist. I'm always looking to the individual, property ownership, this, that, and the other. I'm not looking to society for help. I depend on my family, and my family depends on me, I hope. And I'm very much into individual responsibility and taking things on my own shoulders and doing it myself, right? And I recognize that your lives are being scripted, maybe not in, verbatim, but there are walls that are put up, and you're put into categories as to what the expectations are for you, and what you're expected to know, what you're expected to learn, and where you're expected to go to school, and the positions in life you're expected to fill, and this, that, and the other. This is all kind of structured for you. They even send you to a counselor's office in high school to talk about what you're best suited for. Well, what if I don't want to do what you think I'm best suited for? You constructed a whole exam, the IQ exam, around your school systems to be able to label children and to measure them within your societal bounds. But you don't take into consideration artistic ability. You're not taking any of these things into consideration. What about the desire to learn? Is that measured? That's not measured. None of these things are measured. It's how well you do in math and English skills, or your reading skills, your comprehension, yada, yada, yada. Well, I tell you what, I was great at math. In my senior year of high school, I was taking 4 classes. I was in a thing called co-op where I left halfway through the day and I went to work. But I was taking a required literature course that I had to take. And then I took 3 electives. And all 3 of those electives, trigonometry, geometry, and calculus. Those were my 3 electives my senior year. But it didn't start off that way. At first, it was geometry, calculus, and physiology and anatomy. Within the first 6 weeks, I think it was 4 weeks in, we had a test. And I wasn't getting it. I didn't really understand. I was never really good at science. I was always good at math. I was always good at English. I don't fit into your little box of, if you're good at math, you're good at science. If you're good at English, you're good at history. I wasn't good at history or science. Those were my, I wasn't great at those. And maybe it's just my mind just works a little differently. And that's fine. I'm willing to accept that. And I actually appreciate that about myself, because I look at things from a different perspective sometimes. But I failed miserably this test. We had 4 weeks into the year, 4 weeks. I mean, did the teacher take time to say, okay, you're struggling here. Let's go over these things with you or whatever? Never had that conversation with me. The conversation that I had, the test was graded. The next day I showed up to class. The teacher said, I requested you that you sit in the counselor's office during this period because this course is not made for you. But what if that was really my desire? What if that was my way of scripting my life? What if learning that was important to me? But the teacher didn't take the time to decide that or find that out. They sent me to the counselor's office to trade classes because I made a 52 on a test or something like that. Excuse me. So you're sitting here and you're taught this is the box you fit in, and you better stay within this box, and you better follow this path, or else you're going to be a complete and total failure. Okay, well, what else are you told in school? You're taught to conform, to attend, to participate, and that obedience is somehow virtuous. Just being obedient for no reason whatsoever. Well, I got a story for you. There was a kid, 7 years old. We'll call him Sam. And Sam had a problem. Sam had a problem holding his bladder. If he needed to go to the bathroom, he needed to go to the bathroom. He had seen doctors. He didn't have an infection or anything like that. His bladder was just small. It just hadn't developed completely at his age. And he had troubles holding his bladder. And he told the teacher one day, he said, I have to go to the bathroom. And the teacher said, you just went to the bathroom 15 minutes ago. You're going to have to wait. And Sam said, okay, because he was being obedient, because that's what he had been told. He was supposed to be obedient. Number one, you always listen to authority. You never question authority. You always have to listen to them. So Sam went and sat back down in his chair. A couple minutes later, Sam had peed his pants. So Sam goes up to the teacher and he said, ma'am, I had an accident. And so the teacher sends him down to the nurse's office. The nurse gives him a pair of pants, not even his own pants. They don't even fit correctly. And when he gets home that afternoon, he has a bag of wet clothes. And his mom's like, what happened? And he told her. And she, oh, Sam, I'm sorry. That's horrible. Well, the next day, Sam goes to school. Same thing. Tells the teacher, I have to go to the bathroom. Teacher said, you just went to the bathroom. He said, ma'am, I really got to go to the bathroom. Peed his pants again. And this goes on. The teachers have conferences with the parents. The parents are like, you're just going to have to let him go to the bathroom when he has to go to the bathroom. Teacher says, we can't do that. So the dad tells Sam, look, if you have to go to the bathroom, fuck the teacher. Just go to the fucking bathroom. And if she wants to call me, she can call me and I'll have a conversation with her. The parents got Sam a doctor's note. Teacher still was giving Sam problems. Now, all this for what? To get Sam to obey? Was Sam sitting there pissing his pants because he wanted to? Was it that important? Did he think, oh, well, this has been going on for months and it hadn't worked to this date, but if I piss my pants today, maybe from now on, the teacher will let me skip out of class to go fuck around in the bathroom or whatever she thought he was trying to do. Never crossed the teacher's mind that, okay, I have to make an exception for Sam. I have rules, but you know what? This child, his self-respect and dignity are more important than my rules. No. Fuck your self-respect. Fuck your dignity. You're going to obey. And you're going to fit into this box. And I'm going to script this box for you. And I'm going to draw this box for you. And you better stay within it. And if you get outside of it, you're bad. You're not good. What does that do to a child? Now, I'm telling you one story of one child, but how many kids have gone through this? Sam ain't the only kid. And do you think Sam was bullied? Probably. You think he was picked on? Maybe he was Sammy Pee-Pee Pants or whatever the hell they were calling him? Yeah. But did it matter? No, it didn't matter. Well, let's move on. There's another story I'd like to tell you about. 14-year-old boy. And he had been diagnosed with autism. We'll call him Sam too. I'm just going to call him Sam. Well, Sam at 14 has been diagnosed with autism since he was in second grade. And he got put into special classes. And he always forgot to do his homework, or he would do his homework and he would forget it at home and this, that, and the other. So they put him in special classes with special educated students. And people around the school started calling him retarded. The kid wasn't retarded. He had a 131 IQ. So even by the educational standards, the constructed educational standards, the kid was very intelligent. But he was autistic. And so now this kid starts referring to himself as retarded because that's what he heard. That's the class that he perceived himself in. Who drew that for him? He didn't script that life. He didn't script that idea of himself. How about you sit down and talk to the kid about what he's interested in? Find out how to advance his interest. Why are we putting these kids in these small boxes? And then we wonder why these kids are nihilists or angry or whatever. They have no say in their life. They don't even feel like they have any meaning. And then you go and you look, and I think it was the USA Today, I read the 70% increase in suicide rate in children over the last like 10 years or something like that. I don't have the story in front of me. A 70+% increase. Now, they broke it down by gender and race, and I find that it is uninteresting as anything. And you can just go Google 70% plus increase suicide rate, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it. The CDC has records on it, and this, that, and the other. But why are we ignoring the fact that our children are committing suicide at a 70% higher rate? So that's why I started this podcast. This podcast is intended to draw out, this is what you're not being taught. The things that I wish I would have learned when I was a kid. The things I wish I would have known. Branding, entrepreneurship, promotions, freedom, liberty, the things that I wanted to know, the things I was promised, that I could do anything with my life. But nobody helped draw out how to do anything with my life. So that's what the Stranger Encounters podcast is intended for. It's intended to help people identify and understand how to script their own life in their own way. And if you want to be Rebecca Zinas, traveling the world and working in multiple different countries or freelancing, or you want to be a Damian Ford, branding and working with these big tech corporations. You want to be Kylan Ganger, who's gone off and he's started several businesses. Stephen Worley's been self-employed for 18 years. Scott Horton, who's passionate about stopping wars. He's passionate about peace. So he started his own websites designed just like newspapers and magazines to help spread the word. This is where all this evil stuff is happening. These are all the bad things going on. Pete Raymond, Mance Raider. And he's out there and he's speaking publicly and he's spreading, his message of voluntarism. Or Michael Harris, who's run for office, and he's an attorney and a public defender. And he got to study under Murray Rothbard, one of the greatest economists, as far as the Austrian-minded economist in the history of economists. So how did these people figure this stuff out? And this is what I'm talking about. This is a generalized blueprint to say, you know what? Just because society is scripting things a specific way and they think I belong as a laborer or they think I belong as a manager, it doesn't mean that's what I have to do. I don't have to follow their rules. I can claim my own individuality, my own liberty. I can make them null and void in my life, and I can live it my way because it's my life, and I only get one of them. And that's what Stranger Encounters is about. And I hope that if it's parents listening, these are things that you're discussing with your kids. And if you're teenagers listening, I hope that I'm inspiring you. And I hope my kids are listening because I have kids. But that's what Stranger Encounters is about. And I know this episode is a little bit shorter than normal, but I really thought it was important that I clear up some things. And I explained to you why I'm talking to bands and entrepreneurs and political theorists and activists and podcasters and all the different categories of people I'm talking to. And I'm not just narrowing it down to like one type of person, because all these people have found a way to script their lives in their own way. They've all found individualism and freedom in some way, shape, or form in their life. by pursuing what they want to pursue and finding a way to be successful at it. And I think that's what's important moving forward in resuscitating independence in our culture, is that people are inspired and motivated and given permission to script their own lives, do things their way, live life their own way, and say, I don't care what you tell me. I can do what I want to do the way I want to do it, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else. Thanks for listening to Stranger Encounters. I'm Tommy Salmons. This will be the last episode of the year. Y'all have a happy Christmas and a Merry New Year. We'll see you in 2019. Late.
Tearing deep within my skin, faded eyes can't see, true